Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Advanced Network Analytics, Applying Machine Learning and More to Network Engineering and Operations. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speaker is Shamus McGillicuddy, Senior Analyst at Enterprise Management Associates. Shamus has more than 10 years of experience in the IT industry, primarily as a journalist covering the network infrastructure market. Prior to joining EMA, Shamus was the news director for TechTarget's networking publications. And before I hand things over to Shamus, I wanted today's audience to know that he will be dedicating the last few moments of today's event to answering your questions. Feel free to log those anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email that will include the on-demand playback as well as some additional information on how to access this new research report. So be sure to check that out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Shamus McGillicuddy. Shamus?
Thanks, Raleigh, and thank you everyone for joining us today for this Research Highlights webinar where we'll be looking at some of the results of my study looking at how enterprises use advanced network analytics technology and how they're benefiting from it, what struggles they have, and so forth. It's a research report that published a couple days ago. It's about 33 pages long. You can find it in our research library at your convenience. Behind a paywall, sorry. First, before I get into the presentation, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank the 5 sponsors of this research who provide the financial assistance to enable us to do this. CA Technologies, Dell EMC, Kentic, Live Action, and Riverbed. So just thank you to those 5 companies. Appreciate your support and your partnership on this. As for an agenda for today's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about research methodology and demographics just briefly, just to give you a sense of where I got my data. Then we'll answer the question of why I look at network analytics. Why now? You know, what's the big deal? If you're here, you probably think it's a big deal, so maybe you don't need to have that answered. Then we'll look at solution strategies for network analytics, what enterprises are doing with so-called analytics and their network data. Then we'll talk about some of the benefits and challenges that enterprises are experiencing with network analytics, and we'll just have some concluding remarks and a quick Q&A. My presentation will probably take 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. So first, research methodology and demographics. We surveyed 200 North American IT professionals who told us through screening questions that they are directly involved in a network analytics initiative in their enterprise. So these are people who are either evaluating, researching, implementing analytics technologies in some way. Maybe they're using them or maintaining them for use, or they're consuming insight from them in some way, maybe through reports. They're all IT professionals, of course, as I mentioned. We also define network analytics in the context of our research survey. This is an abridged version of that. It just basically it means an initiative that is focused on the use of analytics technologies and analytics strategies aimed at extracting new insight and value from data produced by and collected from the network. And in the context of that definition, we also talked about this analytics outputs might be consumed by the networking team, by IT groups in general, or by lines of business executives, or all of the above. Here's some basic demographic information about the people who participated in our survey. Job titles, the biggest chunk is CIO, CTO types. IT managers and supervisors and directors are another big group, and architects, whether that's IT architects, network architects, and then project managers and program managers. In terms of IT groups these people worked within, you see, no surprise, IT executive suites roughly a third, which kind of matches up with the number of CIOs and CTOs represented. You see people from IT program and project management. You see people from IT planning, design, engineering, architecture, and you see a small group from network operations centers. Kind of a broad swath of sizes of company. You had to be working for a company that had at least 250 global employees to be considered. And So we have a sweep of small, mid-sized, and large enterprises. The biggest cohort was mid-sized companies, which defined in this context is 1,000 to about 5,000 employees. And then 19 vertical industries represented. The biggest ones were software companies, manufacturers, the finance sector, including finance, banking, insurance, application, cloud, managed service providers is another group. We also saw, I don't know, about 7 or 8% were from telcos, network service providers, ISPs, types like companies like that. So why network analytics and why now? Well, we've been saying this for a while, and based on our conversations with the industry, with IT practitioners, and our research findings, network data is perhaps the best source of truth for digital enterprises. Everything crosses the wire in digital enterprises. Maybe not everything. Face-to-face conversations, unless there's someone eavesdropping with a recording device, perhaps won't be captured. But customer activity, transactions, business transactions, financial transactions, security incidents cross the wire and can be reconstructed or understood or detected. Business trends, you can, if you're doing some sort of trend analysis of network activity, you might see some trends of what's happening in your businesses, your business processes, etc. But the challenge is extracting insight from that data. How do you do it? Network managers have a lot of tools that collect data, different types, subgroups of data, or maybe a couple different types of data, and they're pretty good at presenting that data to you, but they don't do a lot of deep analysis. A lot of times network managers have to sort of do some analysis in their head to understand what's going on. So unlocking the value of network data is a challenge. In 2016, we asked in a large, broad, like sort of network management research study we did, where we sort of looked at basic requirements of network management tools and what kinds of trends we were seeing in the network management, network monitoring, network troubleshooting space. We asked them the question, do you have an initiative in place to apply advanced analytics technology to your network data? And 49% of them said yes. They told us they were doing this to support things like enhanced network security monitoring, network optimization, and even business process optimization. Those are, I think, were the top 3 use cases that they had back then. And that kind of got my mind going, thinking, I'd like to take a deeper look at this at some point. Also, just in the market in general, and network analytics is everywhere, and the conversations that we have, and the news that we see, and there's a lot of mergers and acquisition activity. You can think of some leading Cisco and other vendors that might be on a buying spree on the analytics technologies. Some vendors are buying companies and they call them analytics companies even when they're not analytics companies, which kind of reminds me of the days of when SDN was the new hotness and everyone was buying a company and saying, this is an SDN company, even though it wasn't. Same thing might be happening a little bit with analytics companies and AI companies and machine learning companies. And, this is going to make us much more effective. Anyway, so I see a lot of M&A activity. I see a lot of research and development efforts by monitoring vendors, network monitoring vendors, where they're trying to enhance their management solutions with an analytics feature on top, maybe investing in machine learning to make their tools smarter at figuring out what's going on when they're collecting and analyzing data from your enterprise network. We see embedded analytics coming from infrastructure vendors, quite a few, especially in the data center networking space, where they're streaming telemetry from switches and routers and then applying sort of native analytics features. A lot of the times that analytics capability is built upon open source technologies, just like all the other big analytics features we might be seeing from out there. But yeah, so embedded analytics is definitely something that we're seeing. And then we see lots of startups that are describing themselves as network analytics vendors. One or two of them might be sponsors of this research. So clearly people are interested. Why? Well, we asked in this survey what technology initiatives are driving your time and energy when it comes to network analytics. Like, why are you doing it? And the number one response, we asked them to identify the top 3. And so the number one response was IT automation. IT automation initiatives are driving a third of these, are the biggest driver of a third of these projects. There might be secondary drivers for others, but the biggest driver for at least a third. You see some other drivers here. These are other ones they listed as top drivers: data center consolidation, external cloud services, digital transformation, digital experience management, private cloud, software-defined data center, multi-cloud. These are all, for the most part, what you're looking at here are disruptions. Indications of disruption. Like these are new architectures, new technologies, big changes in the business and in IT, and they're saying, "Whoa, we need to be smarter about what's going on. We need to get more insight from the network to figure out, what the network can do today, what it might be doing in the future, like what's happening on our network." How will things be affected when we do these things? How prepared is our network to support things like this? And these big questions they need answered. So what kind of solution strategies are people pursuing when they decide that they need to leverage network data more strategically? First off, let's look at the use cases they're pursuing before we talk about the solutions themselves. These are the top 6 out of a list of 14 or so that I asked them whether they were pursuing. The big one is end-user experience monitoring, which is something we see a lot just in top-of-mind issues for network managers. This one's been pretty top-of-mind lately, is network experience, end-user experience monitoring. We also see network operations optimization is another pretty major one here, as is network security operations optimization. So they're trying to be more efficient in how they detect and respond to and remediate issues of, in terms of network fault and performance, and also in terms of security risk and security incidents and so forth. And then we see, to a lesser extent, they're pursuing use cases like predictive network analysis and predictive security analysis, which says, okay, based on the data that we're collecting from the network, what can we say about what might be happening in the future? Like when do we need to, when might these circuits be overloaded? When might this site start having performance problems? When might this network become breached by a foreign actor who's randomly probing at our network at different places and so forth. And then business process monitoring is another big one. I mentioned at the outset that a lot of these guys in 2016 were focused on business process optimization. Well, here's business process monitoring, which is an indication that they're definitely, most of them, a small majority of them are focused on delivering value to the business, not just or insight to the business, not just improving IT engineering and operations. So in terms of solutions, I don't think there's really going, we're not trying to look at this and say, okay, here's the network analytics market, but we're trying to understand how people consume analytics, how people perceive their opportunities to consume analytics, and we asked them, okay, so what approaches are you taking from a strategic perspective? And you see majorities pursuing 3. On average, I think it was about 2.2 strategies per respondent. So they're taking at least a 2-pronged or 3-pronged approach in many cases to extracting more value through analytics from their network data. The big 3, a slight non-statistically significant lead embedded in network infrastructure. So that's going to represent, in some cases, hardware refreshes. In other cases, people might be introducing this some vendors might be introducing this through software upgrades to existing hardware. We've seen that in recent, I think, a few times over the last couple of years, some vendors being able to deliver embedded analytics features on existing hardware, but then in other cases only being able to offer it through new hardware platforms with the silicon capable of supporting it. We also see embedded in network operations software, and we've been seeing that for a few years, that's been emerging with vendors doing better and better jobs of providing analytics features on top of their network monitoring, network management solutions to give you a good sense of things like, okay, if I do this network configuration change, how is that going to affect my security policies and my QoS across the network? I'm having trouble finding the root cause. Well, this analytics feature will give you the root cause of that issue that you're getting complaints about. And then also we see a lot of interest in network-specific analytics vendors. To a lesser extent, some of these guys were using general analytics or general IT analytics vendors, maybe like a Splunk or something that's integrating with their network monitoring solutions. And then you see a small amount of interest in standalone analytics stacks. So maybe someone's putting together an open source analytics stack and feeding some sort of network data store to it, as opposed to getting a solution from an analytics vendor that handles the collection and storage and analytics as a package solution. Here's the data that people are using or applying analytics to. You see NetFlow or network flow records like NetFlow, SFlow, IPFix is the most popular. There's really a top 4 here that are pretty popular. Network performance metrics like link utilization and multipathing and things like that. And then network test data, so that's maybe like trace routes, like feeding trace route results, or more likely maybe synthetic transactions. We see a lot of active testing solutions out there now where enterprises are trying to get good visibility into the cloud and into end user activity at distributed sites through probes that transmit and test traffic out into the network. And then quality of service data, those are the top 4. You see at the bottom logs were pretty unpopular, which I was a little surprised by. Raw packets are also less popular. Not totally surprising. That's a lot of data that would have to be stored and analyzed, whereas interpreted packet flows are sort of middle of the pack with 28% of them using it. In terms of heuristics or analytics techniques and technologies being applied to network data, we're going to touch on machine learning in a second, which is something that everyone's probably interested in. But these are the top 4 heuristic techniques we asked them, and I gave them a list of a dozen or more and said which ones are you applying to network data. So process analytics, so sort of analyzing network data, figure out whether you can extract any insight into IT processes or business processes through that analytics, and maybe try to improve those processes or document them, apply them to different workflows, whether it be change management or incident response. That was the biggest one. Real-time predictive is another one, so that's the ability to take data as it comes in, do analysis immediately, try to figure out what's happening in the moment, whereas you see number 4 here was predictive trending, so that's taking data over a long term and trying to figure out what's going to happen tomorrow or a week out or a month or a year out. And also see data mining, which is kind of an exploratory technology, just looking for new insights and fishing for or mining for gold, I guess, in terms of insight. 98% of these analytics initiatives involve machine learning to some extent, meaning only 2% said they had no interest in machine learning. Now, there aren't any products out there that are network machine learning. What we are aware of is lots of vendors in the network infrastructure market, the network operations software market, in the analytics market, investing in machine learning to deliver more value through their products. And what is machine learning? You probably know the definitions out there, but I guess it's the use of algorithms that are able to allow a system to understand an environment or a situation without being specifically, explicitly programmed to understand that environment and respond to it in prescribed ways. It's a cousin to or a relative of AI, I guess. And people are using it to, make sophisticated solutions around things like anomaly detection and guided remediation workflows and things like that. How do they plan to use it? We asked, so yeah, 54% are applying machine learning to network data in some way today, they said, of these network analytics initiatives. The rest were either planning to or researching it with plans to do so, or had plans to use it in the next year or what have you. And then, like I said, only 2% had no plans whatsoever. But yeah, they're not acquiring products that are machine learning products. They're working with vendors that are developing machine learning based features and solutions that they are interested in using. And here, we asked them, primarily, how do you think machine learning will be used in your organization? And they're kind of split here. 44% said automation of low-level repeatable tasks, and then 41% said automation of complex, unique tasks. So they're kind of split on how they're going to go here. I mean, some of them are moving towards closed-loop operations in some way, whereas a larger plurality of them are focused on just, I guess, letting their people focus on the complex tasks and get the low-level repeatable task out of their engineers' workflows and daily lives. Network analytics benefits and challenges. Here are the business benefits of network analytics initiatives that we surveyed. The two biggest ones were sort of acceleration of mean time to repair network problems, which is on everyone's wish list. Since enterprise network managers tend to spend 67 to 71, at least 2/3 of their time, depending on what year it is, to fixing problems. I'd love to speed that up. Efficient network capacity utilization was number 2, and then you see proactive network problem prevention, which is also something that people would love to do, since the typical network operations center only detects about 60% of problems before end users are impacted and complain. They'd love to be more proactive about that and get that number into a better area and make their end users happier and their business more productive. And then optimization of capacity for service delivery was a majority. It was achieved by a majority of them, and also improved correlation between network change and network health and performance. 54% of the enterprises we surveyed said that their analytics initiative was essential to their organization. Most of the others either said it was important or supplemental. But so as you see, more than half are recognizing the fact that analytics is something they can't live without. So we also probed with questions aimed at understanding whether or not the network team is sort of breaking out of the networking silo with analytics. And one of the questions we asked was, who are you collaborating with and supporting better via your use of network analytics and your network analytics initiative? And look at, 76% said IT service management. We're collaborating with and supporting IT service management better than through network analytics. And one of the most popular heuristics we identified was, as mentioned on the previous slide, was process analytics. And if there's one thing IT service management is interested in, is interested in discovering, mapping, documenting best practices in IT processes, and clearly that's an indicator that they're moving together. We also asked them a lot of questions about what sort of modeling and discovery techniques and work technologies they're supporting or integrating with via their network analytics initiatives, and you can find that in the report. At least a half of these projects were also better integrated or collaborating with the application management team, security operations team, and DevOps app dev. And then a small group were collaborating better with product R&D. Groups outside of IT that are consuming network analytics insights directly through reports or dashboards, what have you. Technology R&D was number 1, 44%. corporate executive suite was pretty popular too, the third, and then you see down here customer service, manufacturing, product R&D. We saw some indications that a company's core business will likely be benefiting from network analytics. For instance, that manufacturing number goes up a lot when you look at just the manufacturing respondents. Same thing with the financial industry. When we look just at those guys, they were much more likely to be sending network analytics insights to the finance organization. So there's some indication, and product, and I think we saw something similar with product R&D and the software companies. I see a question here: how many people were surveyed for these results? That just popped up. 200. Analytics also supports network automation specifically. So we mentioned earlier that IT automation was a major driver of network analytics. Here we see 76% of them say that they're using network analytics to support and enable network automation. So there's sort of a loop there. It's driving them and they're doing it. Here are the tasks that were most targeted for automation through or enabled by network analytics. So optimization of the network, cost optimization, fault and performance diagnostics and troubleshooting, and change management. Now we're looking at some challenges here. Risk is the top issue. The big one being objections from the security team or the compliance team or both. People saying, you know what, I don't want you collecting data that might, collecting and cracking open or decrypting data that might have personally identifiable information in it or credit card information. You know, this is not good. I don't want all this data being in motion to the cloud if you're using like a cloud-based analytics solution. You know, that's not working. So they got to work through that with the security and compliance teams. Data sovereignty was also an issue. So, you know, most of these people were North American. Well, all these people were North American IT professionals. Some of them worked for overseas companies, but for the most part, they worked at North American companies. But they all, you know, a lot of them probably have overseas locations, and they might be experiencing problems with pulling data from that part of the network into a global analytics initiative, perhaps. So data sovereignty is an issue, but what you're seeing here is a lot of secondary issues to the big one, which is the security risk or the compliance risk, like lack of budget, lack of leadership, conflict about who owns and shares the data. I guess the one that's least problematic is a lack of vision for network analytics. Like I guess that tells you that these guys know what they want and they know what they need for the most part. And then 6% of them claim they have no organizational challenges for them. And then data collection challenges, we asked them about that too. Here are the four big ones, or the four primary ones. Securing network data, we already talked about how security risk is a big issue. So they're obviously, from a technical data collection perspective, like struggling with that, struggling to meet that risk, or comply with whatever policies they're being pushed upon them by the security group or the compliance group. Managing data quality is a big one. A lot of these guys are doing data lakes of some kind, by the way, with their network data, just so you know. So the data quality is an issue for them. Managing data storage capacity, also an issue, and then determining the amount of data to collect, like where do we collect it from, how much, how much is enough without taxing our infrastructure. You know, like I don't want to collect too many packets, and I don't want to collect too many NetFlow records for a variety of reasons. It's all out there. So anyway, in conclusion, network analytics adoption is driven by automation, data center consolidation, and cloud technologies. And obviously a lot of them are automating networks. Most of them are automating their networks with help from these analytics initiatives. It's not just a product you can buy. It's going to be embedded in things like infrastructure, operation software, There are a lot of analytics solutions as well that are emerging from startups and from established mainstream vendors as well. Machine learning appears to be going mainstream in terms of interest, and people saying they're finding ways to use it, probably through vendors they're working with already who have added machine learning-based solutions to or features to their products. And then network analytics is helping break down the networking silo, deliver value to the business, and they're collaborating better with some key groups within IT. And risk aversion and budget constraints are leading organizational challenges. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Raleigh to moderate the Q&A portion. And this is where you can download the report, enterprisemanagement.com/research. So thank you.
Thank you, Shamus. I will also include a direct link to access the report for those of you who are interested in learning more. That will be part of the follow-up email. If you have any questions, you can log them now. Shamus, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions. The first one is, what technology strategy do you recommend for a network analytics project?
Well, I think there isn't one to pursue. You probably have a lot of vendors you're working with already. So what you should do is you should talk to them and be like, what are you doing with analytics technologies and machine learning and things like that to make to deliver more value to me, to make your products more usable and useful and add value to them. And based on those conversations, you might already have an analytics strategy in place you don't even know about. You just think about how, think about your business and what information is contained in the network data that you are able to capture with the various tools you have or the technologies you have in place. You might have an infrastructure vendor that's adding things like streaming telemetry to their switches and routers that can give you new, more granular views on what's happening with your network. And if you're not happy with what you're hearing from your vendors, then you can, depending on the life cycle of your investment, start looking and seeing what other vendors are doing in the network operations space and the network infrastructure space. But also, there are network analytics vendors out there, vendors that are, collecting, storing, and crunching data in the cloud or in an appliance, or maybe even in a virtual appliance that can sit in your data center or wherever, and start applying advanced analytics solutions. I've also seen network operations software vendors offer like cloud-based solutions that specialize in just taking the metadata they create from your network and applying machine learning to it in the cloud to deliver added value to their solutions. So that's another thing we see. It's all kinds of ways. There's no one way. It's going to depend on your business, I guess. I guess that's my answer to that question.
Thanks for that insight, Shamus. Speaking of machine learning, who is offering a machine learning tool for networking today?
No one. As far as I can tell, there are vendors out there. They're describing themselves as machine learning-based analytics vendors or what have you. And what they're doing is they're offering some sort of monitoring solution, network monitoring solution, or network analytics solution, and applying machine learning algorithms to it in different ways, and then building like applications, or for lack of a better word, on top of that to provide different workflows or use cases on top of that learning. So vendors aren't very shy about the fact that they're using it, so it's not hard to find them. Some of the sponsors in this research are using that, and some that didn't sponsor it are doing it. So that's there's no market out there for network machine learning tools, but there's lots of vendors out there that are using it to add value to the products that you're probably already using. So thank you.
Good to know. Thanks. Let's take one final question. It is, what kind of info are people outside of IT getting from network analytics?
So when we asked that question directly, the biggest one, there are like 5 or 6 that a majority of them were feeding to lines of business, specific business metrics that they're feeding to the business side. The biggest one was tracking revenue through IT services. So being able to track, how revenue generation maps to IT services and sort of delivering sort of awareness of the value of IT to the business. And then also, things that are think about like chargeback and things like that. So another big one was internal cost of service delivery and how much does it cost to deliver you this service, and we're going to bill you for it. So those are some low-hanging fruit for them, and then a lot of them were also reporting on SLAs. Another one that's no shocker. The business activity metrics was another one, and then sort of tracking cost of service delivery for external partners or external service providers. So figuring out like how much it's costing the organization to consume Amazon Web Services or something like that. And then some more interesting ones were looking at supply chain through network activity and being able to figure out like how a company's supply chain is working. Also being able to track whether or not you're being able to convert customers from a competitor's website. That's something you can gain insight into from the network. And then user behavior metrics and also being able to report on how long it's going to take IT to develop and deliver some new business services, things like that. So those are some of the ones that they're doing today.
Great. Thank you, Shamus. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. As I mentioned, you will be receiving a follow-up email from EMA that will include the on-demand playback and more information about how to access the report. I hope that we see you at a future event. Enjoy the rest of your day.